All right, your fantasy football drafts are right around the corner. Maybe this weekend, maybe next weekend. We're here today to give you 4 of my must draft, must roster players in 2025. These are the players I want on every single one of my teams, one at each position. So one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end. You let me know what you think in the comments. We're going to get you ready for your drafts today. So without further ado, here we go. And we're going to start with the wide receiver because wide receivers, I feel like now more than ever, are getting pushed up draft boards. But there's one wide receiver that I think is still an extreme value in round 2, and that would be Drake London. London finished as the wide receiver 5 overall and the wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game last year. And he ranked number 3 amongst wide receivers in targets last year with 157 and number 6 in target share. And to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to change this season because we have a new quarterback, a quarterback upgrade. So it should get better for him. And the Falcons didn't really add much in the way of target competition for him, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do want to talk about Michael Penix because in 3 games where Michael Penix attempted at least 5 passes, week 16 through 18, albeit it's a short sample size. Drake London, 13 targets per game, averaged 23 fantasy points per game in that span. Although week 18, 40.7 fantasy points, that skews that quite a bit. When you look at the reception perception charting for Drake London, it's unbelievable. 79th percentile win rate against man, 77th percentile win rate against zone, 87th percentile win rate against press coverage. His success by route tree lights up green, except for the corner and post routes. So this tells me that Drake London is a really good wide receiver that just needs a decent quarterback to get him the ball. We know he's going to get the target share because of who's on the roster right now. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Casey Washington, Kadero Hodge, Jamal Agnew. They did add DJ Chark, but I don't think that moves the needle that much. Kyle Pitts, Charlie Warner. I mean, Drake London is clearly the guy. And we know that this environment for an offensive player like Drake London is going to be really good because in fantasy football, we want to target players in good offenses with subpar defenses. And we know that playing in that dome half of the games in Atlanta is going to be really good weather-wise as well. The Falcons' defense wasn't good last year. They ranked number 23 in points allowed per game. They did focus on defense in the offseason. They spent 2 first-round picks on Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., but I think it's notable to point out that both of those guys are undersized at their position, so they're going to be decent pass rushers, but they're going to be rookies at the same time. So I think that this Falcons defense is built to stop the pass. I don't know if it's built to stop the run, and I still think that they're going to give up a ton of points. The only real concern when drafting Drake London is, is Michael Penix going to be good? And I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I think Michael Penix is going to be good. I certainly think he's going to be better than Kirk Cousins was last year, and that's what we're banking on with this selection of Drake London in round 2, because if Michael Penix he could be significantly better than Kirk Cousins. He could be just a little bit better than Kirk Cousins, but the chances of him being better than Kirk Cousins last year are really good, especially considering he's had a year essentially to sit. He played a little bit last year and learn the offense. So Drake London for me is my must draft wide receiver. Let's move to running back. Kenneth Walker, currently going in the 4th round, according to ESPN rankings. Maybe the early or late 3rd, you might have to take him. Kenneth Walker, I get it. The concern is the injuries, and he did miss 6 games last year, 2 with an oblique injury, 2 with a calf injury, 2 with an ankle injury. But before this season, he played in 15 games in 2023 and 15 games in 2022. And when you look at who the offensive coordinator is for the Seattle Seahawks, it is Clint Kubiak. And Clint Kubiak has a history of featuring one running back. In 2024, that was Alvin Kamara, finished as the RB5 in fantasy points per game. In 2021, that was Dalvin Cook when Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Cook finished RB5 in fantasy points per game. There are also some signs that Kenneth Walker is going to be used more as a bell cow in 2025. The most obvious sign was his increase in usage, especially in the passing game. He saw 53 targets in 2024, which ranked number 13 amongst running backs. Now, remember, 2024, he missed 6 games, 13.8 target share as well. In 2023, Walker saw just 37 targets in 15 games played. So that's an insane increase in usage, especially when you factor in the games that he missed. The second indicator would be his snap share and opportunity share. You have to be on the field to score fantasy points. And in 2024, Walker ranked number 12 amongst running backs in snap share and number 11 in opportunity share. Compare this to 2023, where he ranked number 24 amongst running backs in snap share, number 14 amongst running backs in opportunity share. And we touched on the offensive coordinator already, but I do want to point out that the main reason why people are not drafting Kenneth Walker, or they're afraid to draft Kenneth Walker, is because the injuries and Zach Charbonnet. But I would argue that Charbonnet, while being a really good player in his own right, and he was good in Kenneth Walker's absence last year, RB8 finish in week 2, RB7 finish in week 3, RB1 finish in week 14. As soon as Kenneth Walker was healthy, it was right back to Kenneth Walker last year. And everything points to the fact that Kenneth Walker is going to be the bell cow running back in Clint Kubiak's system, with Zach Charbonnet being one of the more important handcuffs to own for sure, but still just a backup running back that's going to be a handcuff, and Kenneth Walker is going to be the guy. And I would argue that, Kenneth Walker is very similar to some of the elite runners that Clint Kubiak's had in the past. He's not as good of a pass catcher as Alvin Kamara, but I'd argue he's a better runner than Alvin Kamara, especially in between the tackles. Dalvin Cook, I think Kenneth Walker's a dynamic runner, maybe not as on the level of Dalvin Cook, but I think he's really, really good and underrated right now in fantasy football. And because of all that, and I get it, the offensive line, not as good, but it should be better than it was last year in Seattle. I think Seattle is going to rely heavily on this running game, and Kenneth Walker is just going to get a ton of volume. And that volume, with players as good as Kenneth Walker, I think he's got the talent to turn that volume into some serious fantasy points for us in 2025. Let's go to tight end next, and then we'll go to my quarterback. And tight end that I'm drafting everywhere is Hunter Henry. You don't have to draft him early. You can wait till round 12, round 13 sometimes. Hunter Henry finished number 5 amongst tight ends in targets last year with 98. He led the Patriots in targets, which isn't really saying much. But more importantly, he was number 7 amongst tight ends in red zone targets last season. This New England offense has been upgraded in just about every way possible, from offensive line to skill players and coaching. I mean, they have a better offensive coordinator than they had last year. Josh McDaniels wasn't a great head coach. I get it. But this offense is going to be able to move the ball, and they're going to be able to score points. We already have Drake Maye talking about, and we're alluding to my quarterback pick here. We're already having Drake Maye talk about how he's going to run more in the red zone and on the goal line. I think those opportunities are going to be plentiful. But Hunter Henry is going to be a monster red zone target for Drake Maye. I mean, you look at the other players on the roster, there isn't really a big-bodied wide receiver. Sure, you have Kyle Williams, Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, but there's nobody that really matches what Hunter Henry can do in the red zone. And sometimes when we're looking at breakout tight ends, I think we can make it simple and just say which tight end has the best chance of catching double-digit touchdowns that's being drafted outside of the top 12 tight ends. And I think the answer this year is Hunter Henry. Now, I alluded to it earlier. My quarterback that I cannot stop drafting, that I must have in 2025, is Drake Maye. Drake Maye showed why he might be one of the top producers at the quarterback position last year. He played in 10 games where he attempted 20 passes or more. In those games, Maye averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game. If we extrapolate that out, he would have ranked number 13 amongst quarterbacks last season. Well, why is that impressive, Seth? Well, it's impressive because the Patriots were an absolute dumpster fire last year. Their offensive line ranked 32nd out of 32 teams, according to PFF. Let's not forget that they had no weapons on offense outside of Demario Douglas. Hunter Henry led the team in targets. No shade to those guys, but they're not premier weapons in an offense. They shouldn't be. And we also have to remember that the coach was fired as well. So not only were the weapons bad, the offensive line was bad, but the coaching was bad. Every single category, every single area has been improved along the offense. The offensive line, they signed 4 offensive linemen, or signed 4 offensive linemen. Grant Bradbury, Morgan Moses. They drafted Will Campbell and Jared Wilson. It won't be an elite unit, but it's going to be better than it was last year. They also added Stephon Diggs. They drafted Kyle Williams. So more ammunition for Drake Maye. But we haven't even talked about the best part yet, and that's the rushing upside of Drake Maye. Last season, essentially playing in 10 games that we talked about, he rushed the ball 54 times for 421 yards and only 2 touchdowns. And if we get a full 17-game season with that kind of rushing production or somewhere close to it, we're talking about 90 rushing attempts, 700 rushing yards, and about 3 to 4 touchdowns. But the touchdowns are the big wild card factor here, because Drake Maye is already talking about that he's willing to do whatever it takes near the goal line to score points for his team. He's a big quarterback. I almost said big wide receiver. He's a big quarterback. He can do it. He can rush the ball. He's mobile. And if any quarterback has an opportunity to jump into that elite tier of quarterbacks, we're talking Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. If any quarterback has an opportunity to do that this year, it's Drake Maye. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the like button if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of it. We're going to have you covered here. We're going to have you prepared for your fantasy football draft this year. We're going to help you win your league, so stay tapped in. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.